Go.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to 1 Million Cups at Office Evolution. We are excited to have all of you here. I want to go through a couple of things. Please be sure to check in on your mobile app. Please be sure to ask awesome questions. If you're new here, let me give you a little bit of background. So 1 Million Cups was started by the Kauffman Foundation. There are over 200 of these chapters across the U.S. And every morning, Wednesday at 9 o'clock, we get together with a business owner, we hear a challenge from them, and then the business community provides feedback. So again, we'll have Chris Bennett speak today from Technology Innovation Law. Very excited to have him here. What we'll do is speak for about 6 minutes. We'll ask lots of questions, give him lots of ideas, and then he can leave with some really great insights and action steps to help move his business forward. There are index cards in front of you. If you ask a question or if you want to jot down your information and you have ideas, please use those to capture your notes. Our sponsor today is Blur Coffee. It is a Vietnamese coffee, fabulous. You can subscribe and actually have it delivered to you. It's a wonderful coffee. And we are 1 Million Cups, and that is 1 Million Cups of coffee. So we're super excited to have a coffee sponsor. So with that, again, make sure you check in on the app, and we will go and get started. Chris, take it away.
Thank you for that introduction, Jen. And I want to say I'm really excited and appreciate the opportunity to speak to 1 Million Cups today and get your feedback. There's a couple of caveats very quickly because I'm in the clock. The first is I've had one of the worst past 10 days of my life for social and business commitment reasons. So that's mentioned because I haven't had a chance to practice this in 6 minutes. So I really appreciate your help and guidance in keeping me on point. The second challenge that I have is I'm fighting against the implicit bias of being an attorney, where people think we're a law firm, and we're not. We're actually, our mission is to work with marginalized and underserved populations to create intellectual property rights using services, an app, and a matching platform to match them with financial opportunities. And that's why Technology Innovation Law, or TIL, which is our mark, is at the Georgetown Venture Lab. And our mission in pursuing that is to, in fact, pivot from being perceived as a law firm to focusing on what we really want to do, which is use software to connect with marginalized populations on creating intellectual property rights. That's a pretty complicated area, but we think that there's room to make a positive difference for the individuals and for the world. The first point that comes into play is that we did research, extensive research on a number of sources, and we found that there is a population that in both the developed and the developing world that has innovation. They have capabilities to create new ideas that can help society and help themselves financially. But they haven't been able to connect with the way to create those assets, those intellectual property rights assets. That number of folks in that joint section area, that blue area on that bubble chart, is about 3 billion people. And we've decided to take expertise as a law firm, to put it in software code, and then to help those folks who want to pursue it create intellectual property rights in the form of copyrights, trademarks, patents, or understand trade secrets in ways that are accessible to them. Here are some of the questions that we found from a problem perspective based on our research. And these are things that we found that said in the developed and the developing world. And one caveat I want to mention is that my colleague, my co-founder, is from Ethiopia, from Addis Ababa, and he's an intellectual property scholar. So we're both attorneys. I just happen to be more nerdy, techie, and social justice part of the equation. The common problems we found are, first of all, there's an awareness issue. People don't know what the heck is an intellectual property right. Do I have any now? How do I get them? If I get it, can I keep it? Can I pay for it? And then what's the whole life cycle? And by the way, is there any return on investment when I finish with all this stuff? Those are common challenges that we found that people have. When we started our initiative, we actually have been replicating some of it with a service model as we try to write the product code. What we found is actually it has value because we actually have clients and revenue. And so we want to show you what's the solution to those problems that I mentioned before. Initially, we're focusing on copyrights, and there's some reasons for this, some tactical reasons. Long story short, these copyrights are very accessible. So for example, the notes that Jen's taking now, once she's finished with it, she has a copyright. She's taken something from an expression, she's put it in a tangible format, and now she has a copyright on it. Very accessible. From a solution perspective, we found that the easier approach to take in trying to address this issue of putting in software is to enhance awareness. That's something that goes in developing world. Then make the capability of intellectual property rights accessible to people. They can get to it when they need it. And next, which is a big challenge, is the affordability component. So we have a pretty radical idea of, for qualified, marginalized populations, free intellectual property rights creation. And then for those who can pay, there's a paid tier. And the last question is the availability of an upside, an opportunity to create value on the back end. And so we're putting together a platform to match people who create intellectual property rights with potential funding sources, business partners, and other ways to help them monetize it if they want financial gain, or if they want to do it for self-actualization purposes, whatever is their ultimate goal. So from that perspective, you'll see that we've come in on services we're offering today. We have clients, we have 27 client interactions. We have some paying clients today for services. We're building the application at the Georgetown Venture Lab. And one of our challenges is, I'm actually writing the code. And I know a little JavaScript. I'm using something called Bubble to actually write the code. It's not my strength, I know that. We're looking to get to a point where we actually have some real professionals and actually work on that. The third area is the platform, the matching platform. We actually have a client who said they want to be the first on the matching platform to work that process out. And the last area is a success fee. Where there is a successful matching, then we look to take a small success fee in the back of that. Each of those has a free tier component. Each of those has a revenue, a compensation component. So we believe that that solution comes in and addresses the problems that we identified previously in the marketplace, in those underserved and marginalized populations. These are a couple of our actual clients today. I want to emphasize that our pilot markets are Ethiopia and the United States, in particular the Metro Washington, D.C. area. So on the left, you see Giram, and he is a poet, and the way that particular poetry book he's asked us to do a copyright for him is called Yeshiving Tesfaropavk, and he's on our free tier. So we're doing that copyright work for Giram now. On the right is Marion. She's an educator. She lives in Maryland, and she's on our paid tier. And Marion has asked her to help create a copyright for a unique method that she has for helping young children write. She has 38 years of experience, and she worked at a noted private school in that area. And her mission is to just offer it to folks to make a positive difference, but she also wants to be able to work with them on a collaborative basis. So these are two clients that we have today, Marion on the paid tier, and then Giram on the free tier. Our ability to actually deliver this and what makes us different are these four areas. Our mission. We're not in it to make a lot of money. We're a social enterprise. We're actually in it to, Joe, you've heard this before, but I'm going to repeat it anyway. We're in it to actually make the world a better place. Because we think that in 7 billion people in the world, if only 4 billion are actually contributing actively for intellectual ideas, and there are 3 billion who are disengaged, we'll do better if we get them all on board. That's one of our primary missions. The second is the business model. As I mentioned before, we recognize there's value in offering free, so we built it to offer that. And then also we need revenue to continue the business model and be reinvested into it. And it has certain components, including the intellectual property we have. So we obviously have our own copyright, we have our own trademark, we have our own proprietary methods that are trade secrets that we're working to embed in the software to really differentiate what we do. And then last but not least, are people. Right now our team is massive. There are 3 of us. Myself is a co-founder. Also my colleague Adu Sime is a co-founder. And we just added a formal advisory board member, Wendy Chen, who has prior experience at Pfizer and some other large organizations as a CIO. This is an example of what I've done with my coding capability on Bubble to try to show a replica of our application, and actually it's somewhat functional, but it gives you a sense that we're actually moving the ball forward despite having small resources, because we believe in what we're trying to do. So, one of the things that I communicate with Donnell, I've shared with Jen and Dan, is what are our asks for this audience? And we appreciate your expertise and appreciate your comments. The first one is, how do we enhance our message? My elevator pitch sentence is, we're democratizing intellectual property rights for underserved and marginalized populations using services, an app, and a matching platform. I want to make that better because I want it to be clear, compelling, and very simple. The second ask for the team is suggestions for enhancing our discovery process. We meet with small groups, we've done a lot of data gathering with secondary and primary research, and we've actually pursued working with 1 Million Cups. We presented 1 Million Cups Richmond. We appreciate being here, and we're going to do 1 Million Cups in Minneapolis in March. Because in large respect, 1 Million Cups represents entrepreneurs who might be the right target for us to talk to. So it's great feedback to speak. And then last but not least, recommendations on connecting with prospective funding sources. So we can actually professionalize and build that software, get it into the marketplace on not just a minimum viable product model, but we believe in a minimum viable secure product model for a number of different reasons. So with that said, I think I've gone through the cycle. Hope I stayed on schedule, and I'm going to back up to the slide and stop. Thank you for your time and attention. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to start with a question, because my head went down a different path. When you're presenting versus your elevator pitch. When you say underserved and marginalized populations, can you explain that to me a little better? So I think of maybe a different group than you would think of.
And when we say that, we mean it actually boils down to 3 categories. It's folks who really haven't connected with creating intellectual property rights. That's pretty broad. It's folks who have no awareness for it, and they don't have a lot of money. So one of our primary mission is to connect with people who don't have a lot of capital to be able to create intellectual property rights. The second is actually folks that are in economically disadvantaged areas. And the reason we want to connect with those folks is because usually those are places where intellectual property is one of the most accessible options for them to create a new asset. All you need is actually the strength of your own mind, and you may need a problem that you're trying to solve. And if you want to get a copyright or trademark or trade secret or even a patent on that, then it might have value for other people in the world facing the same issue. So the second is economically disadvantaged areas. And then the third is actually comes into play in that usually in developing countries. And these are areas that are both economically disadvantaged and may just be disconnected. They haven't really been able to participate in a meaningful way in the economic system. So the market categories are pretty broad. We recognize we want to be able to further segment that and get to know that customer base better. That's what we have at this point. That answers the question.
It does, but I think, with 3 large populations, that it's going to be hard for you to sell and you'll look unfocused.
Understood. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Over here. First time correcting format, it's not right. But a couple of things about your pitch, the elevator pitch. You use the word democratization, and it tends to have an electoral meaning, and it sounds like you're using it more in the context of widening the scope of who has access to legal advice and protection, so on and so forth. So I would humbly encourage you to think in each one of the words that you use in the elevator pitch, and what if I lose part of my audience because they think, wait a minute, democratization, what does it have to do with the electoral thing? What's going on here? So it got me to think in those terms, right? What are you democratizing? Does it have anything to do with politics? Anything to do with electoral processes, right? So just for you to think about. The other thing that came to mind is, what is the friction that you're trying to solve for your paying customers, right? Why are they willing to pay? Being protected seems to be, but will the true value be realized and understood by them when they face legal friction?
Right.
Somebody inflicting on their rights.
Right.
Not knowing your rights is very interesting. You teach me, you protect me, but when do I exercise them? Why do I exercise them? How do I exercise them? And therefore I'm protected. I'm protected by this platform. I was protected for 5 years, and now I'm being. So maybe that adds to your ask there into how do you connect better the message and who realizes the most value. Hopefully it's helpful.
Thank you. Dave? Yes, sir.
Dave Morrell, 4 Steps Ahead Business Advisory Services. I like the idea. I think that what you're presenting to people at first is sort of the eating the elephant in an entire bite.
Right.
And part of your messaging, if you can figure out how to, I think if you can figure out how to help people compartmentalize it, it will help them embrace it, because they can go say, oh, okay, this is how something little can make a big difference. But their first assumption is going to be, I can't change the plight of 3.5 billion people just by my own actions. You can do it in the collective, but they may take a look at it, and there may be a bit of dismissiveness about it as a result of, oh, we can't possibly all do it at one fell swoop. So, like I said, I like the idea. I think it's a matter of figuring out how to get people to engage with it on a mentally manageable level as an individual.
Okay, thank you for that. Russ? Yes,
Russ McIntosh, Vision Idea Design. Well, what I'm having trouble understanding is this a software application you're trying to distribute, or is it a service-based thing that you can coach and guide people through?
It's a software application delivered over the web,
Okay.
and then it's combined with services and also the matching platform.
And when do you expect to have that running in operation?
We should have it in 3 months,
Okay.
the first version of the application, software application.
And then as far as reaching different demographics and so forth, are you talking about underdevelopment areas? I'm thinking of like Anacostia, right across the river.
Right.
There's a lot of youth groups and community centers that I think would be beneficial for you to reach out to and say, hey, if you have an idea, whether you're an artist, a writer, or you have an intellectual property, an app idea, come talk to us. We can help guide you. We can show you the software and how to do that. So that might be beneficial for you too.
Great, thank you for that.
Tony?
Yes, sir.
And I apologize if I missed the slide or didn't see it, but what are you calling the app itself?
We haven't given it a formal marketing name, so right now it's called TIL's app.
All right, so given the background from Ethiopia that you two have, and the purpose is to help undeveloped countries, I went and looked up words for intellectual property protection. And protection is the word Tebeka, and property is the word Nebreti. And if you merge the two together, you come up with a word called Nebeka. And Nebeka, I looked up, and there's only 2 people in the entire world who actually have that name. So if you want to try and consider that as an idea, because it's catchy, it's phonetically correct, and funny enough, the one of the 2 references to it is a company that makes knives.
Okay.
Using that name.
Okay.
So maybe that would be kind of coincidental, but maybe that's an idea to think about, is something that uses that language that people here may not recognize, but it's enough of a phonetic name that people can catch on to it. You know, if you sit there 20 years ago and say that, you know, a company called Amazon would be the biggest company in the world, people would laugh at you and say, yeah, right, okay, fine. What are they, you know, tall women? And he's like, yeah, no.
Thank you for that.
That's great.
I think that's something to maybe consider farther down the road. But surprisingly, small, goofy names like Loop or Google are easier to remember than long names.
Kodak, Lego.
Kodak, everything.
It would be great to get a better perspective on, for your discovery piece, how many customers are you trying to interview or beta test, even if it's through a paper app. And there are websites where you can build an app for demo. Really easy, it's just wireframes. I think there are 2 organizations that I would recommend partnering with as a source of getting companies to you, because it'll be hard for you to go out and find one business at a time. The Entrepreneurs Institute, which is a global institute, and they have, I think, like 900,000 entrepreneurs as part of it globally. That might give you an entree. The other question I had for a local partner was Cooley. So is it beneficial to work with law firms who don't want to work with this particular population to give you referrals? And Cooley is really well known in the entrepreneurship space. So those are just some thoughts on who might you partner with to help get people coming to you, so it's not such a, you know, treasure hunt to find people. So how many businesses would you like to have on the beta, let's say between now and the middle of the year?
have not set a target for that.
Okay.
That's a part of our overall operations planning process. Where we are right now is we're actually updating our financial model to reflect some of the feedback from our advisory committee member. And once that's done, then we'll start the process of going out and looking at how do we raise the right amount of funding to add enough folks so we can achieve more scale. And then roll out the initial version of the product and then start to kind of like migrate forward. So that we would hope to have that in the next couple of weeks.
I'm gonna go to Danelle and then right here.
So
Yes,
who's
sir.
your competition?
I've been asked that question before, and it usually falls out in potentials. The shortest kind of competition is Aptly. Second part is Google, because as most folks are aware, in many cases you can represent yourself. Everything from an intellectual property perspective, if you have the time and the inclination, you can do it yourself, or the Latin word pro se. The third part of the competition could be large law firms or tech firms that are in the space using artificial intelligence and that want to offer something in that same space. So, well, right now we haven't found anyone that's targeting the same sector because it's financially, for the reasons Jen mentioned, they don't have a lot of money. So a lot of folks don't see them as a viable market. But since we have a social mission, that's less concerning to us than actually meeting their needs and then working with them to kind of help solve the world's problems. Did that answer your question?
Yes, because as you were talking, I was thinking of like LegalZoom and all of those other type of Legal Shield, you know, those type of agencies.
Right.
When you were speaking, and I would look at their model on how they grew their business and kind of do some research on that, and then probably go down that avenue or somewhere close to that.
Okay. Thank you. Yes,
Couple
ma'am.
of random thoughts. First of all, you do have somebody right here in Tyson's that's doing something very similar.
Okay.
The name is Loci, Loci.io.
Mhm.
In fact, I was just they held an event the other night
Okay.
for entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And I was so confused that I thought today I was hearing Loki because they sound so similar to you.
Okay.
So just to put them on your radar. Thank you.
Definitely.
But you did mention you used the term before. Your advisory board member and Jen, I know, mentioned Cooley, which is certainly one top tier law firm for entrepreneurs.
Right.
Do you have any of those law firms, or who have you approached for your advisory board that might be able to give you some good ideas about, which law firms and how law firms under what conditions might send funds prospects your way?
So the direct answer is we've approached one law firm that's affiliated with the incubator. So we're in the process of trying to set up a meeting with them. And our model actually focuses on working with the local law firms in the market. So we don't, and the reason I want to mention that is because we did a webinar yesterday with a law firm called Zeal. They're based in Ethiopia. They also practice in Kenya. And we actually were working with the Georgetown Alumni Association webinar. And the idea is we want to work within the existing ecosystem of law. So we don't want to disrupt it. We actually want to create an eruption of ideas. So we want to work with law firms like Cooley and others and be an extension for them addressing a marketplace that isn't getting attention. And that's how we kind of get some of the value. So we haven't approached any others other than the one affiliated with the Venture Lab directly.
Right. I was thinking more though of getting them on your advisory board.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we haven't done that, but that's something we'll consider for some feedback. Thank you.
I'm gonna take a turn. So there's 3 of you, and one of them is an advisory board. And then those, you two, what are your backgrounds?
I'll start with my colleague. Adu is a George Mason grad at LLM. He has a bachelor's in law and from Ethiopia, from Mekelle University. And I call him an intellectual property scholar because he loves it. He eats it, he sleeps it, and he founded our global intellectual property consulting practice. My background is a lot nerdier, but I'll try to summarize it for you. I have a bachelor's in education from Morehead State University. I have an MBA in finance from University of Pennsylvania, and I have a law degree from Georgetown. But most of my career has been spent in the tech space, about 20 years working with MCI, which is the only, but working in the government space, creating technology-related programs and platforms. My last assignment was to create an innovation initiative for the District of Columbia, and we launched a program to improve public safety wireless across the city using in-building wireless and also wireless carrier connectivity. So I'm kind of the nerdy lawyer guy and the social justice guy because I do pro bono work for a number of different organizations.
Okay, very cool. Jen?
Are you an LLC or do you have, I was just surprised if you are an LLC, why you're not a B Corp?
Well, we are an LLC, and it was just because, and this is a great point, we've done two pivots. The first pivot was we started as a law firm, picked up some law firm clients in May of 2016, and so we set it up as an LLC. And then after about a year, because of a number of different discoveries and different sources, we said, this isn't how we create the most value. And specifically, we attended a World Bank event and also an event at George Washington University that said, there's a better way to do this. So we went through the process of actually creating intellectual property rights as a service and saying, how do we move this to the cloud? How do we embed artificial intelligence and use machine learning to actually make this simpler and then offer it free to people who really need it and can't afford to pay for it. So that.
Yeah. Follow-on suggestion.
Okay.
Because it's about vetting the services and the pricing, I would focus on the Georgetown startup Hoyas and use them as, because they're all students for the most part, although some are not. They're students at various programs, so they could be different ages. But they aren't going to have a lot of money anyways to do the protection. And since you're at George Mason, I would look at their startup program because they have a lot of businesses that come through the startup that are student-led. So you already have at least 2 universities that you could have pilot clients. So I'd reach out explicitly to them and even Georgetown Venture Lab and talk with them about that and start with, just copyright your logo and then start with, here's why IP matters and protecting your ideas. But I think it sounds like you really need right now are just beta testers to vet it and make sure it works. And then if you could get a few from outside of the US, that's fine, but at least validate it here in DC. I would think they'd be open to that.
Thank you for that.
Great.
What have you done so far to put information out about your company to the World Wide Web, if anything?
Barry, we have a web presence which reflects more of the law firm aspect of it. It doesn't really talk about the IP rights as a service. And then we've done some of these the 1 Million Cup events, but most of it's been word of mouth at this point. We haven't launched any programs or any campaigns. So far, the business interest and the interest that we have has been in person and then word of mouth for our community.
Tony?
Thank you for that.
Going to your funding question, have you approached or met with the World Bank yet or discussed with them their grant program they have for business innovation for undeveloped countries?
I have not.
Okay,
We have not.
I'm looking it up right now. They're headquartered in DC. I'll forward you the link that I found and talk to them because it's very interesting what they have here. And yeah, for support of small businesses, from legal standpoint and also from business development and business sustainment, they offer grants.
Same idea came to my mission. Same idea. As soon as you mentioned World Bank, they did a lot of it.
Yeah, and since they're right in DC, you're in DC, makes it simpler to go meet with them.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to put you in touch with somebody. Her name is Alexis Bonnell. She's CIO for USAID. And they try to connect local entrepreneurs and social, and I'm reading this, and social innovators to the work that USAID does, and they have resources, which may be grants. The only thing is now the government is closed. So she's taking an extended vacation. So she keeps updating me as soon as we get back, But I can send her a note. I don't know where last time I sent her a note, she said, I don't know if I'll receive it. I'm out of bandwidth, network. But I can give you her contact information. You can use my name. And if you don't connect, when I do meet with her, I'll make sure you do connect. Okay?
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I think that's great. And this is farther down the road, but if you guys are looking to serve marginalized populations in international countries, there's all these different things that you're going to have to navigate.
Yes.
So USAID is great because they can get in touch with local governments or whatnot to be advocating for you, because I mean everyone's got access to the internet, but even then it'll be tough for potential entrepreneurs in foreign communities around the world. It'll be tough for them to just hear about you guys. But if you guys have a great, easy product that has navigated those markets or knows how to operate in them, and then you've got foreign governments or entrepreneurs or even businesses advocating for you guys, I think there's real potential there, and USAID is great.
And Dan, if I may compliment that and share with the team, as a part of our discovery, we actually participated in the eBay business model competition, and two things that we received from that are that there are third parties, NGOs that would actually pay us to do some of this work and offering services to marginalized, disadvantaged populations in their countries. And the other piece was that it helped us to cement the approach of partnership, where we really want to be a platform for intellectual property rights as a service, and we want to work with local organizations, NGOs, governments, law firms to deliver the services, because one of the things about law is, intellectual property law, is even though you can do it yourself, it's complicated, depending on what you want to do and how you want to do it. So it really needs to be very client-focused in order to get the right result. Thank you.
You know, there is another group here, I don't know if you know this, but the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is looking for a social thing, they have an incubator. So you know this.
We're in the process of actually communicating with their accelerator.
Mike Ravensworth?
I think they call it Peace Tech, is what they call it.
Right, the guy who runs it, I believe, is Mike Ravensworth.
I haven't had the pleasure.
He used to run Mach 37 here. I helped run Mach 37, which was at the CIT.
Okay.
So if you're in contact with them, okay, great. You know that.
Two questions on the business model. It wasn't really clear the difference between the free service that you showed earlier for the poet and the paid, and why someone would choose paid versus free. And then I wasn't totally clear on the matching. So could you talk a little bit to each of those pieces,
Sure.
if possible?
And Jen, if I may, I'm going to oversimplify and say that the difference between free and paid is paid, you get a higher service level.
Okay.
That's the way to simplify it.
Okay.
And I can talk more detail about it later. As far as the matching is concerned, we found, especially for things like copyright and trademark, because of the way they're structured, there isn't a real market matching process for them other than Google. But if you look at patents, there actually are marketplaces set up. There's like a royal exchange that's set up to match patent holders. We want to replicate that. We want to do it for copyrights, which are lower margin, less exciting, less sexy, but definitely has a lot of merit if you look at movie scripts and other things. So the matching is literally to take something like Marion's Finger Fun Club or Gilrum's Yesholat Merawak, and to put it in a place that people can search if they want to look for material, and then when they find that material, connect them with the creator. And then there are different technologies, you can use blockchain or other things to assist that, but the bottom line being that if there's a successful agreement, then we would take a portion that's a small success fee. If there's a deal struck. No deal struck, no money out of hand because...
So for example, if Reese Witherspoon needed a new movie script for her production company, and she knew about your app or website, she could come search that for a, script written by a female about, okay, got it. Because I was thinking matching, like getting money to match or something, but that's totally different. That sounds like a very different business, and it's a bit, not confusing, but it's a separate value proposition. I'm not sure if it should be part of this same business model, so just a thought.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that. I think in our thought process, we try to come from ideation on through to some type of value or monetization. And in that chain, if you're a financially disadvantaged entrepreneur, there needs to be an opportunity to try to actually get something out of it. And that was one of the missing pieces. Like, okay, I wrote this great poem, but how do I market it? How do I do that? So we wanted to offer that mechanism as one way for them to monetize if they want to pursue it.
dovetailed off of Tony's idea, the backup thing, and it's actually because you're talking about helping people who need better knowledge and access to the global economy. There you go.
Thank you for that.
With our compliments. So play with that as a basis, but getting your messaging to the point where it reaches people and they say, oh, okay, well, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, then you can launch into the elevator speech, and then you can launch into vignettes of what it is that will make, will make them say, oh, I'm really interested in learning more, and, providing support and doing things you need to do. No.
This is a question I sort of have with you. I do have a problem with the elevator pitch about focusing on I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's one thing they all need, is money. Now, of course, some of them could be peeled off by Cooley because they're, high potential very quickly and all. But they all need money. So the thing about being, as I said before, when you said disadvantaged or marginalized, simply because my daughter has worked in a prison, volunteered, I thought of a very different population. But so all entrepreneurs need money. So it's all along the spectrum of needs. So I don't know if you think about, and I'd like to see what other people think about, focusing on the marginalized population and underserved. Entrepreneurs, they all need money, but some have less of a chance of getting it than others, or something like that. Go ahead.
So here's where I think would help you. As you can tell, a lot of people are going toward that, and you should only really be talking about the problem that you're solving, and you and your team should be focused on who wants to fix it, or the way that you go about fixing it, and who you're going after. But the problem that you're solving should be first and foremost, and your audience. You're probably going to pivot on that a couple more times as you grow, but it's a lofty goal. So when I think of underserved, my definition is totally different than what you just said, and her definition is totally different than what you just said. And so when you throw broad ideas out there, it's up for interpretation. And so, but your goal is to help people that need your services, correct?
Yes.
And in that, you'll fulfill exactly what you need to do, and you and your team can go after those underserved people in Guatemala, in Texas, in wherever that location is. You guys can focus your efforts on that. But the problem that you solve is what should go out there first, and then we can bring those people to you that have that problem. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And so I think I get the last question too.
We have 2 more thoughts.
Oh, we got 2 more.
Okay.
Yeah, Tony?
To dovetail off of what Donnell just said, we've had several software companies that have been here over the past year who have presented a very similar challenge. How do I improve my messaging? How do I be clear, more simple, to the point? And what has developed, to what Donnell said, is the simplest explanation is always the best. So taking a look at what your problem what problem you solve, what is it the app does, sometimes pared down to the most simplest form in a sentence is usually the best message, because it puts it right out there. Too many times we've had companies who've given these elaborate descriptions of what they do, and when you trim it down to, noun, verb, noun, or whatever pattern you want to do it, it works out that that's the simplest way to do it. In this case, we protect your intellectual property rights, or simplification of protecting your intellectual property rights. Something simple like that is often all it takes for people to look at it and get right away what it is you're trying to do. Then they have the interest to dig in and see how you do it.
I think you should call your app Idea Protect. It's not taken, and it's very simple, and it's English. For this market, you might have a different name for an international market. I do think you need a tagline and maybe even well, I don't know if it's your idea as protected or what that looks like, but I think as far as segments, the segments that are, to your point, the least aware tend to be artists, to be people who are very creative and just don't understand how they could be protecting their ideas. And it's business owners too. I mean, we've all seen the movie Joy, I think, where she didn't have her idea protected, and then that was an expensive thing. So I do think there's a lot of content that could be created where it's very specific. So if you think about someone searching on Google, how do I make money off my script?
Right.
How do I make money off my photos? How do I sell my art? How do I sell blah, blah, blah? And you're writing very specific either blogs or video content that answers each of those. That would be helpful. I don't think of women as, well, actually, I'm not going to make that statement. 6% of women entrepreneurs in the U.S. make over $100,000. So 94% are doing something where they're not getting compensated potentially for the value of that. So there are a lot of distinct groups that if you targeted them and said, hey, don't assume your ideas can't make you money, right? Make sure you're protected, protect your knowledge. I think there are some very distinct markets that if you target them, it'll be a lot clearer to them that they need you and why they need you versus just saying all entrepreneurs or something like that. So I would get really clear on maybe the 3 to 5 segments and go after those in a very specific way, whether it's artists, whether it's women business owners, whether it's minority business owners. But just the last few thoughts. Donnell, what's our last question? Wrap it up for us.
Thank you so much for sharing your idea and your business with us. We really appreciate that. How can we as a 1 Million Cups community help you?
Well, A, you've already done quite a bit with this discussion. I think B, in follow-up, just an ongoing relationship to provide coaching, provide results, and almost like a virtual advisory team, if you will, and a virtual relationship.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
So you officially have a 1 Million Cups coffee cup. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Jen.
Let me speak a little bit about upcoming Fairfax and apply to present. If you're thinking of getting up here in the February-March timeframe, you should apply really soon, or you may not get scheduled. Then we have Pivoting Strategies on the 6th, and then our 1-year anniversary on the 13th of February. We would love to have you come out and join us and celebrate. Random Words Marketing, run by Laura Drain, will be presenting. She's one of our organizers. So we'll share the news. I think we'll be here on the 13th a little bit earlier, maybe with some anniversary celebration goodies, but we would love to see you then. Please make sure you join us. Thank you again for all of your support, and we will see you soon.
If you have your cards, please pass them to the left.